really, like I said, it's a misnomer to call it the January 6th indictment. It's really the, it's not as catchy, but, the election date up through January 5th indictment. In fact, Jack Smith's actual indictment only mentions the actual physical attack on the Capitol. It says Trump tried to leverage, it doesn't say Trump caused it. It says Trump tried to leverage the uncertainty that resulted from that attack in order to, accomplish his mission of stealing the election.
Right. And Trump's defenders, and presumably Trump's defense, say this is basically criminalizing speech. I mean, you're basically making it impossible for a wronged candidate to raise questions about the legitimacy of an election by using the tools of the state to punish dissent. And there are First Amendment rights in the United States to say whatever you want, and you're allowed to go out and say what you want. What's wrong with that defense?
I think that's absolutely one of the two defenses, and you stated it really well, Josh. I think the comeback, we have very broad First Amendment rights. You're allowed to lie. I mean, you can be sued for defamation at a certain point, but the First Amendment protects horrible speech. It protects, in many circumstances, lies. It protects, in many circumstances, dangerous language. We set the bar very high in the United States for where speech can become a crime in particular. And the type of speech that is entitled to the highest level of protection is political speech. So he will argue what you just said. This was political speech. I'm entitled to contest an election. I'm even allowed to lie. I can get behind a microphone and say I won and there's massive fraud. I mean, it's not great, but it's not a crime, he would argue. It's protected by the First Amendment. And Jack Smith takes this on. In the very first page of his indictment, he says, yes, there is First Amendment rights, but he argues that what Trump did sort of crossed the line into unprotected speech. I mean, not all speech is protected. If I tell you, Josh, hey, I'd like you to murder so-and-so, and I buried a gun outside your house, use that. All I'm doing is talking, but it makes me part of the crime. So the prosecutor, and this is what the jury will have to resolve. The other defense Trump's going to make is something along the lines of, look, I had advisors telling me I had lost the election, right? We saw it publicly. His attorney general said it's over, there's no fraud. Other responsible, important people told him you lost. But I also had other advisors telling me I had not lost and there was fraud and I needed to fight it. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell. Now, a sound-minded person will go, how could you listen to Rudy and Sidney Powell? They're maniacs. People even call them team crazy versus team normal. I agree. I agree it's wild to listen to Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell. I agree that the reality was Trump, I'm sure, was just trying to cherry pick whatever advice he wanted to hear. But you get into the problem, he'll say, look, presidents get competing advice from their advisors all day long, every day. And if you're going to make it a crime for him, he doesn't always have to listen to the stodgiest voice in the room or the best educated voice in the room. Sometimes he can, he's entitled to listen to whatever. And he's got different groups of advisors telling him different things. He chose to trust Group B rather than Group A. Maybe history will judge him harshly for that, but is it a crime? I'm articulating his defense here. But I think, the comeback to that is he knew what he was doing. He was just looking for whoever would facilitate his lies and his fraud.
And why does he need to have known what he was doing? I'm a little bit hazy on that second defense, because if Rudy Giuliani says it's my professional legal opinion that you should kill so-and-so and Trump goes and does it, then it doesn't change. The fact that he had legal advice doesn't change the fact that the conspiracy or the murder or the plot to steal the election or whatever that underlying allegation was legal.
So there are limits. We call this the advice of counsel defense, or Trump might try to make some sort of second cousin of that. But there are limits, including the advice can't be patently ridiculous that any normal human would realize is ridiculous. Like if your lawyer says, go ahead and kill that person, no sane-minded person would say, okay. But if you're getting into arcana of, was the election stolen? What rights do you have? Can you contest it? It's more arguable. And to your question, why does it matter if Trump knew he lost? Because you have to prove criminal intent. I mean, what if Trump genuinely thought he won? What if he did actually? He did not. But what if he did actually win? Would his conduct here have crossed the line into criminal? I don't know. Again, he did not win. I believe he did not. I believe he knew he did not win. I believe he was putting on fronts and covers here. But I'm just sort of playing these arguments out for you.
I'm still unclear. So it does make a material. You do need a mens rea, so to speak,
yes,
like a guilty
state
mind.
Of mind.
You need the person to be aware that they're committing a crime in order for it to be a crime in this case.
You need to know that what you're doing is wrong and unlawful. You don't need to show the person knew, well, the statute code number, whatever, I'm probably violating that now. But I mean, there are various ways you can prove mens rea, meaning a guilty mind. Some of the things Trump did, arguably, it doesn't matter whether he thought he won or not. Like, if you read his conversation, his famous conversation with the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who says, I need you to find 11,780 votes. If you read that as he's asking this guy to fabricate votes, it doesn't matter if Trump thought he won or lost. That's guilty mind anyway. There's some debate about whether that's actually what Trump was trying to say there, which we can get to if you want. But for a lot of the other stuff, pressuring Mike Pence, if Trump really believed that he lost the election and that there was fraud and that some of the states should be thrown out, is it criminal for him to say to the vice president, hey, we have I think some of those were wrong, were fraud, and you shouldn't count them when it, I mean, I'm not saying it's a great defense, but this is, you do have to prove some wrongful state of mind. If he knew he lost and he pressured Mike Pence, you clearly have the wrongful state of mind.